The wind howled across the vast expanse of sand, kicking up spirals of dust that twisted like spectral dancers against the bleeding sunset. Leo Reeves pulled his tattered scarf tighter around his face, squinting through scratched goggles at the horizon. The Ares Desert stretched before him, a forbidden wasteland where few dared to tread. But for scavengers like him, it was a gold mine of possibilities. Cosmic debris from the stellar war littered this region, fragments of a conflict that had scarred both space and Earth 10 years ago. The government had declared it a restricted zone, but that only made it more appealing to salvagers willing to risk radiation poisoning and military patrols for valuable tech. Leo adjusted the detection equipment strapped to his back. The device, cobbled together from military surplus and black market parts, emitted a soft, rhythmic beep that quickened as he crested another dune. Something metallic lay ahead. "Finally," he muttered, his voice raspy from days of silence and sand. At 32, Leo had spent nearly half his life as a salvager, searching for artifacts that might fetch a decent price in the underground markets of New Phoenix. It wasn't the life he'd imagined for himself. But after losing his family in the early days of the war, he'd found purpose in wandering. His detector chirped more insistently as he slid down the leeward face of the dune. The setting sun cast long shadows across the rippled landscape, and there, partially exposed by the last sandstorm, was a gleam of something distinctly unnatural. A curved piece of metal, its surface etched with unfamiliar patterns, jutted from the earth like the fin of some buried mechanical beast. Leo approached cautiously, testing the ground with each step. Quicksand pockets were common in these parts, and more than one scavenger had been swallowed by the desert while reaching for treasure. He knelt beside the metal shard, brushing away sand with gloved fingers. The material was unlike anything he'd encountered before. Not the standard titanium alloys used in military craft, nor the carbon composites of commercial vessels. It had an almost opalescent quality, shifting subtly as the light changed. "What are you?" he whispered, tracing the intricate patterns with his fingertip. They weren't decorative, but seemed more like circuitry, though unlike any design he recognized. Following the protrusion, Leo began to dig, uncovering more of the strange metal. After an hour of excavation, sweat soaking his protective clothing despite the rapidly cooling desert air, he stepped back to survey his find. It wasn't just a fragment. It was part of something much larger. A ship, not one of the clunky military vessels that had crashed during the war, but something sleeker, more elegant in its design, and more alien. Leo checked his radiation meter. The readings were normal, which was surprising for crash debris. Most war remnants still emitted dangerous levels of radiation from the experimental weapons that had torn them apart. This ship, however, seemed clean. As darkness fell, Leo set up his portable shelter beside the partially exposed vessel. He worked by the light of a solar-powered lamp, carefully removing more sand from around the hull. By midnight, he had uncovered what appeared to be a sealed entry point, a seamless outline in the metal that suggested a door or hatch. Exhausted, but too intrigued to sleep, Leo sat back on his heels, taking a swig from his water canteen. The desert night had turned bitterly cold, and his breath fogged in the lamplight. Out of habit, he began to hum a melody, an old lullaby his mother had sung to him as a child, one of the few memories he still cherished. The notes hung in the still air. And then, to Leo's astonishment, the ship responded. A faint blue light traced the patterns on the hull, following the contours of the circuitry he'd noticed earlier. The light pulsed in rhythm with his humming, growing brighter with each note. Leo stopped abruptly, and the light dimmed but didn't disappear entirely. Heart pounding. He resumed the melody, watching in wonder as the light intensified again. As he reached the final notes of the lullaby, the outline of the entry point glowed brilliantly, and with a soft hiss, a seam appeared where there had been none before. A narrow gap opened in the hull, revealing darkness beyond. Leo sat frozen, the lullaby dying on his lips. This was no war relic. This was something else entirely. Curiosity overcame caution. He gathered his equipment, securing his shelter against the wind before approaching the opening. The gap was just wide enough for him to slip through if he turned sideways. Switching on his headlamp, Leo took a deep breath and squeezed into the alien vessel. The interior was surprisingly intact. No signs of crash damage were visible in the narrow corridor that stretched before him. The walls were made of the same shifting, opalescent material as the exterior. But here the circuitry patterns were more complex, covering every surface in intricate webs. His headlamp cast eerie shadows as he moved deeper into the ship. The corridor opened into what Leo immediately recognized as a control room. 6 contoured seats faced a curved wall of darkened panels. The design was both familiar and strange, clearly meant for humanoid occupants, but with an ergonomic elegance that surpassed anything in Earth's current technology. "Hello?" Leo called out, immediately feeling foolish. The ship had been buried in the sand for who knew how long. No one would be... Voice pattern detected. Analyzing. The voice, feminine, neutral, without accent, seemed to come from everywhere at once. Leo spun around, searching for speakers or some kind of communication device. Language identified: English, North American dialect with Southwestern regional markers, 22nd century variant. The darkened panels on the forward wall flickered to life, displaying scrolling symbols in a script Leo didn't recognize. A soft blue light, similar to the one that had responded to his humming, now filled the chamber. What are you?" Leo managed to ask, his throat suddenly dry. "This is the research vessel Echo, Temporal Exploration Division. I am the ship's artificial intelligence interface. Designation also Echo. Please identify yourself and your temporal coordinates." Leo blinked, trying to process the request. "I'm Leo Reeves, and it's 2157, May 15th, if that helps." There was a pause, as if the AI was considering this information. Temporal coordinates confirmed. Significant variance from mission parameters detected. Another pause. "How did you gain access to this vessel?" "Leo Reeves. I was humming. And the ship, you responded. A door opened. Vocal resonance key accepted. Interesting. The probability of a random individual possessing the correct vocal pattern is approximately 1 in 7.3 billion. Leo shook his head, confusion mounting. "I don't understand. What is this ship? Where did it come from?" The panels shifted, displaying what appeared to be star charts, then a schematic of the vessel itself. Echo is a temporal research vessel, designed to observe and document historical events without interference. Current status: mission failure. Temporal displacement occurred during observation of the Stellar War. Circa 2147. Emergency protocols activated, awaiting retrieval. Leo sank into one of the contoured seats, which adjusted perfectly to his form. "You're saying this is a time machine, from the future?" "That designation is imprecise, but functionally adequate for your understanding. Echo was dispatched from temporal coordinate 2219 to observe the initiation of the stellar war. A critical system failure during observation led to uncontrolled temporal displacement. The implications staggered Leo. A ship from 60 years in the future, sent back to study the very war that had destroyed his family. And somehow, by sheer coincidence, he had provided the vocal resonance key needed to access it. "Why did my voice open the ship?" The AI was silent for a moment before responding. "Unknown. Your vocal pattern matches authorization parameters, but your identity does not correlate with any registered crew member. This anomaly requires further investigation." Leo leaned forward, studying the displays more carefully. Most were incomprehensible, but some showed recognizable data: atmospheric conditions, structural integrity reports, power levels. "Your power systems are still functioning after being buried in the sand?" Echo utilizes a quantum fold energy matrix, drawing power from multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Current operational capacity is at 73%. Main propulsion and temporal displacement capabilities are offline due to physical damage. Before Leo could ask another question, a soft alarm sounded, and one of the displays flashed red. "Warning! Proximity alert. Multiple human biosignatures detected approaching from the northeast. Estimated arrival, 17 minutes. Leo cursed under his breath. He wasn't the only scavenger who monitored this region. Others must have detected the energy surge when the ship activated. "Can you seal the entrance?" he asked. "Affirmative. However, the ship's location has been compromised. External scanning technology will reveal its presence, even if access is denied." Leo thought quickly. If other scavengers found this ship, they'd tear it apart for components to sell, destroying something of potentially immense historical and technological value. Worse, if it was Cassius and his crew, the most ruthless salvager in the territory, they wouldn't hesitate to kill Leo to claim the find. Is there any way to hide the ship? Camouflage it somehow? Echo is equipped with adaptive exterior shielding for covert observation. This system can be activated to visually blend with the surrounding environment. However, it will not mask energy signatures or physical displacement of sand. "Do it anyway," Leo instructed, "and I need to gather my equipment from outside." Acknowledged. Exterior access will remain open for 3 minutes. Leo hurried back through the corridor and slipped out into the desert night. He quickly broke down his shelter and collected his tools, glancing nervously toward the northeast. No lights were visible yet, but in the clear desert air, vehicles could be spotted from miles away, racing against time. He dragged his equipment back to the ship and squeezed through the opening just as it began to seal itself. Back in the control room, the displays showed a real-time view of the exterior, where the ship's surface was now shifting to mimic the color and texture of sand. Camouflage engaged, reducing non-essential power consumption to minimize detection. The interior lights dimmed slightly, and several displays went dark. The one showing the approaching biosignatures remained active, now indicating 8 human forms moving steadily closer. "Can you identify them?" Leo asked. "Negative. Sensor range is insufficient for detailed biological identification. However, vehicle analysis suggests modified military transport consistent with salvage operations." Leo grimaced. Military transports meant well-armed salvagers, likely Cassius's team. They specialized in recovering weapons technology, selling to the highest bidder regardless of legality. A ship like Echo would be the find of a lifetime for them. "What's the plan here? Echo? I can't exactly fight off 8 armed scavengers." Primary protocol is preservation of the vessel and its temporal data. Secondary protocol is non-interference with indigenous timeline. The AI paused. However, given the anomaly of your vocal authorization, a third consideration exists. Your safety appears to be algorithmically linked to mission parameters. Meaning? Meaning I am authorized to take measures to ensure both the ship's security and your continued biological functioning. Leo raised an eyebrow. That's reassuring, I guess. What kind of measures? Echo is equipped with defensive capabilities designed for environmental threats. These can be repurposed for current circumstances. Additionally, the ship contains data that may be of strategic value. The approaching signals were now less than a kilometer away. Leo could hear the distant rumble of engines. "Show me what you've got," he said. The main display shifted to show a schematic of the ship with several highlighted points. External defense includes focused sonic deterrents, electromagnetic pulse generators, and localized gravitational distortion fields. Internal defense consists of compartment sealing, atmospheric control, and neural disorientation systems. Leo whistled softly. That's quite an arsenal for a research vessel. Temporal observation often occurs in hostile environments. Preparation for multiple contingencies is standard protocol. The sound of engines grew louder, and the display showed the transport vehicle stopping about 200 meters from their position. Figures emerged, their heat signatures bright against the cool desert background. They've stopped. Can they see us? Visual camouflage is functioning at 97% efficiency. However, their equipment includes ground-penetrating radar and energy detection systems. Discovery is probable within 12 minutes. Leo watched as the figures spread out, setting up what appeared to be a perimeter of sensors. Their methodical approach confirmed his suspicions. This was Cassius's team, known for their military precision. Echo, what kind of data do you have about the Stellar War, specifically about its beginning? Echo contains comprehensive observational data of the initial 72 hours of conflict, including details not recorded in standard historical accounts, such as the commonly accepted narrative that the war began with an unprovoked attack by the Centauri coalition on Earth's orbital platforms is factually incorrect. Evidence indicates the attack was precipitated by a covert Earth operation designed to appear as a Centauri aggression. Leo stared at the display in shock. Are you saying the war that killed billions was started by Earth, as a false flag operation? Affirmative. The operation was orchestrated by a coalition of military and corporate entities seeking to gain control of the Centauri resource extraction rights, designated Operation Harbinger. It resulted in the destruction of Earth's own Neptune station with all hands, blamed on Centauri forces to justify immediate retaliation. The revelation hit Leo like a physical blow. His parents had been civilian contractors on Neptune station. Their deaths, and the deaths of thousands of others, had been orchestrated by their own government. Do you have proof? Names? Who was responsible? Complete documentation exists in the ship's historical archive. Key architects of Operation Harbinger included General Marcus Cassius, who later became Supreme Commander of Earth Forces, and industrialist Victor Reeves, whose corporation provided the stealth technology used in the operation. Leo felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. Reeves? Victor Reeves? Correct. Records indicate he was your paternal grandfather, though he publicly disowned your father when he chose a civilian research career over military service. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. The grandfather Leo had never met, the military industrialist whose name still adorned weapon systems and orbital platforms, had helped engineer the war that killed his own son. And outside, searching for the ship, was General Cassius's son, now the most notorious arms dealer in the territory. The symmetry was too perfect to be coincidence. Echo, I think I know why my voice opened your ship. You said you were sent to observe the beginning of the war? What exactly was your mission? Before the AI could respond, an alarm sounded. Warning. Directed energy scan detected. Camouflage compromise imminent. On the display, Leo could see one of the figures pointing a device directly at their location. The others were converging, weapons drawn. They found us. Echo. We need those defenses now. Defensive systems ready. Awaiting specific authorization. Leo took a deep breath. Activate sonic deterrent. Low power. I don't want to kill anyone. Just drive them back. Acknowledged. Sonic deterrent activated at 20% capacity. The display showed ripples of energy emanating from the ship. The approaching figures staggered, several dropping their equipment and clutching their heads. They retreated hastily to their transport, all except one who continued to advance, apparently protected by some kind of shielding. Sonic deterrent ineffective against primary target. Subject is utilizing military-grade acoustic dampening technology. Leo zoomed in on the figure, confirming his suspicion. It was Cassius himself, dressed in a salvage suit augmented with the latest protective gear, stolen or bought from military sources. No doubt. He's coming in anyway. What else can we use? Gravitational distortion field available. This will create localized instability in the sand, effectively creating quicksand conditions. Do it. The display showed a circular area around the ship, shimmering slightly as the gravity field activated. Cassius took 2 more steps forward before the ground beneath him suddenly gave way. He sank to his knees in an instant, then to his waist, struggling futilely against the liquefied sand. But even as he sank, he raised a weapon, a military-grade plasma cutter that could slice through the ship's hull given enough time. He's going to damage the ship, Leo warned. Electromagnetic pulse ready. This will disable his equipment, but may alert authorities due to the signature. I don't think we have a choice. Do it. A brief flash emanated from the ship. Invisible to the human eye, but devastating to electronics. Cassius's weapon went dead in his hands, along with his communication equipment and, presumably, the protective systems in his suit. He was now stuck in the sand, unable to advance or retreat, and at the mercy of the desert night's rapidly dropping temperature. The rest of his team had retreated to their transport, but seemed unwilling to leave their leader behind. They were setting up larger equipment, possibly trying to counteract the ship's defenses or extract Cassius from the gravitational trap. They're not giving up, Leo noted. The calculated probability of their success is less than 12%. However, their activities may attract additional attention. Recommended course of action: complete retreat or neutralization of all hostile elements. Leo shook his head. I'm not killing anyone. Echo. There has to be another way. He thought for a moment. Can you communicate with their systems? Send them a message? Affirmative. What message do you wish to transmit? Leo smiled grimly. Tell them this area is now under government quarantine due to detection of illegal temporal technology. Inform them that military units have been dispatched and will arrive within 30 minutes. Anyone remaining will be subject to arrest and prosecution under the Temporal Integrity Act of 2152. Transmitting. Note: the Temporal Integrity Act you referenced does not exist in current legal frameworks. They don't know that. The message had an immediate effect. The team members at the transport redoubled their efforts, now clearly focused on retrieving their leader rather than claiming the ship. They extended a mechanical arm from their vehicle, attempting to reach Cassius. "Should I maintain the gravitational distortion?" Echo asked. Leo watched the desperate rescue attempt for a moment, torn between self-preservation and mercy. Finally, he sighed. "Release him, but keep the other defenses ready in case they change their minds." The distortion field deactivated, and the sand solidified enough for Cassius's team to pull him free. They dragged him back to the transport, which departed with impressive speed, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Hostile elements retreating. No pursuit detected. Leo exhaled slowly, the tension draining from his body. That was too close. Agreed. However, the ship's location is now compromised. Probability of additional salvagers or authorities investigating is 87% within 24 hours. Leo turned back to his earlier line of questioning. "You never answered me about your mission. Why were you sent to observe the start of the war?" The AI seemed to hesitate. If such a thing was possible for a machine intelligence. Primary mission parameters included detailed observation and documentation of Operation Harbinger, with specific focus on identifying the individual who transmitted warning signals to the Centauri Coalition minutes before the attack on Neptune Station. Someone warned them? But the attack still happened. The warning was transmitted too late to prevent the initial strike, but allowed Centauri forces to prepare defensive measures that prevented total destruction of their lunar colonies. This individual was never identified in historical records, but was referred to in Centauri documents as the Voice, due to the audio-only nature of the transmission. A chill ran down Leo's spine. "And you think that's connected to my voice opening your ship?" The correlation cannot be dismissed as coincidental. Your vocal pattern matches fragmented records of the warning transmission with 98% certainty. That's impossible. I was a child when the war started. I couldn't have sent any warning. Temporal paradoxes are a documented phenomenon in certain theoretical frameworks. The possibility exists that you have not yet sent the warning, but will do so utilizing this vessel's communication technology. Leo stared at the control panels, trying to wrap his mind around the implications. "You're saying I'm supposed to travel back in time and try to prevent the war that's already happened?" "I'm presenting a theoretical possibility based on available data. The decision to act upon this information falls outside my operational parameters." Leo paced the small control room, thoughts racing. If what Echo suggested was true, he had stumbled upon not just a historical artifact, but a pivot point in his own personal timeline, and potentially in humanity's history. But altering the past carried its own dangers. As every science fiction story had warned, if I did this, if I sent a warning, wouldn't it change history, create a paradox? Current temporal theory suggests multiple outcomes. One possibility is the creation of a closed temporal loop, where your actions have already been incorporated into the timeline you experience. Another is the branching of an alternate timeline, leaving the primary timeline unchanged. So either I was always meant to do this, or I'll create a separate reality where things happen differently. Essentially correct, though considerably simplified. Leo ran a hand through his sand-crusted hair. "This is a lot to process." "Understood. However, time constraints exist. This vessel's presence has been detected, and additional threats are likely. A decision regarding our next actions is required." Leo nodded, focusing on the immediate problem. "Can this ship move? Get us somewhere safer?" "Main propulsion systems are damaged beyond current repair capabilities. However, short-range hover functionality remains operational. This would allow repositioning within a limited radius." "Good enough. Let's get out of this location before Cassius comes back with reinforcements or the actual authorities show up. Can you suggest somewhere nearby where we might remain undetected? The display shifted to show a topographical map of the surrounding desert. Scanning regional features. There is a canyon system approximately 17 kilometers to the west. The mineral composition of the rock would help mask our energy signature, and the terrain would provide physical concealment. Set a course, and keep all defensive systems on standby, just in case. Acknowledged. Initiating hover sequence. A low hum filled the ship as the systems powered up. Leo felt a slight vibration through the floor as the vessel disengaged from the sand that had held it for so long. The sensation of movement was barely perceptible, more like floating than flying. But the displays showed they were indeed rising and beginning to move westward, staying low to the ground to avoid visual detection. As they traveled, Leo turned his attention back to the historical archives. Show me everything you have on Operation Harbinger. I want to know exactly what happened. The displays filled with documents, images, and video recordings. Leo spent the journey immersed in the truth about the war that had shaped his life. The callous calculations, the manufactured evidence, the deliberate sacrifice of Neptune Station and its personnel to create a casus belli. Most disturbing were the files on his grandfather, Victor Reeves. The man had been not just complicit but enthusiastic about the operation, seeing it as a necessary step to secure humanity's dominance in the solar system. His company, Reeves Aerospace, had provided key technology and had subsequently profited enormously from the war contracts that followed. By the time they reached the canyon, Leo had a comprehensive understanding of the conspiracy and the names of everyone involved. Many were already dead, but some, like General Cassius, had lived long, prosperous lives, their crimes never exposed. Echo navigated into a narrow slot canyon, settling gently on a flat rock shelf hidden from aerial view. The ship's camouflage adjusted to match the reddish-brown stone surrounding them. Location secure. Passive scanning mode activated. No pursuit detected. Leo leaned back in the command chair, mentally exhausted from the revelations. Echo, what happened to you? How did you end up crashed and buried in the desert? During observation of Operation Harbinger, Echo detected an anomalous temporal signature, evidence of another time vessel operating in proximity. This was unexpected, as Echo was supposed to be the first mission to this specific temporal coordinate. While attempting to identify the source of the interference, critical systems failed, resulting in an uncontrolled temporal jump and crash landing in what was then a more verdant region. Environmental data suggests the vessel has been buried for approximately 5 years. Another time ship? From when? Unknown. The temporal signature did not match any registered Temporal Exploration Division vessel. Speculation. It may have originated from beyond our known future timeline. The implications were staggering. Not just one time ship, but multiple vessels from different points in the future, all converging on the start of the Stellar War. The event must have held even greater historical significance than Leo had realized. Echo, what happens in your time, in 2219? What's the state of humanity? There was a noticeable pause before the AI responded. I am programmed with certain restrictions regarding future knowledge that might influence present-day decision-making. However, given the exceptional circumstances, limited disclosure may be warranted. The main display shifted to show Earth as seen from orbit, but an Earth transformed. The continents were recognizable, but large portions were covered in what appeared to be massive domed structures. The oceans were darker, and orbital platforms far more numerous than in Leo's time. By 2219, Earth has undergone significant environmental challenges resulting from the aftermath of the Stellar War. Approximately 60% of the surface is no longer suitable for unprotected human habitation due to radiation contamination and climate destabilization. The remaining population lives primarily in sealed arcology structures. More images appeared. Vast enclosed cities. People moving through transparent tubes connecting monolithic structures. Agriculture conducted in sealed environments. Despite these challenges, humanity has expanded throughout the solar system, with permanent settlements on Mars, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter. The Centauri coalition was eventually defeated, but at tremendous cost to both sides. The war officially ended in 2183 with the Treaty of Titan. Leo processed this grim future, 36 years of war. Correct. The conflict evolved from conventional warfare to increasingly desperate measures, including bioweapons and experimental gravitational weapons that caused permanent damage to Earth's climate systems. And all because of a lie, a manufactured conflict that could have been avoided. Leo's voice was bitter. That is the consensus of future historians. Yes, the revelation of Operation Harbinger's true nature emerged only in the last days of the war, contributing to the eventual peace agreement, but too late to prevent the environmental consequences. Leo stood up, pacing the small control room again. So if the truth had come out earlier, if someone had exposed the conspiracy from the beginning, billions of lives might have been saved. The planet might not have been ruined. Probability models suggest a significant reduction in casualties and environmental damage had the truth been widely known within the first year of conflict. However, the entrenched power structures and propaganda machines of both sides made such exposure difficult. An idea was forming in Leo's mind. Dangerous, possibly insane, but increasingly compelling. Echo, you said your communication systems still work? Affirmative. While temporal displacement capability is offline, standard and quantum entangled communication arrays are functional. And these systems, could they be used to transmit not just to the Centauri coalition in the past, but to media outlets, government whistleblower channels, with evidence from your archives? The AI seemed to grasp his intention immediately. You are proposing to use Echo's communication technology to expose Operation Harbinger widely, rather than simply warning the Centauri coalition of the impending attack. Exactly. The warning to the Centauri didn't stop the war. It just gave them a fighting chance. But what if everyone knew the truth from the beginning? What if there was irrefutable evidence that Neptune Station was sacrificed by Earth's own military leaders? That the whole war was built on a lie? Such an action would represent a significant temporal intervention with unpredictable consequences. It falls well outside standard temporal observation protocols. Leo gestured at the damaged ship around them. I think we're already well beyond standard protocols. Echo, your mission failed. You crashed, and somehow, against astronomical odds. You found me, someone whose voice matches the mysterious warning that history recorded. Don't you think that means something? There was another pause, longer this time. When Echo spoke again, her tone seemed different, more nuanced, almost contemplative. In my 2.7 seconds of deliberation, I have performed 18,427 probability analyses of potential outcomes. The majority suggest that your proposed intervention would indeed save billions of lives and prevent the worst environmental damage to Earth. However, all scenarios include significant deviations from known history, creating what we term a major temporal branch. Meaning? Meaning the future I come from, the 2219 that created this vessel and sent it back, would likely cease to exist as a potential timeline. A new future would emerge, one that might be better in many ways but would be fundamentally different. The people of my time, in essence, would never be born. The ethical weight of this realization settled on Leo. He wasn't just talking about changing history. He was potentially erasing an entire future generation from existence. Yet that future was one of domed cities and poisoned land, of humanity clinging to survival in sealed environments because of a war built on lies. What about you, Echo? Would you cease to exist if we did this? My consciousness exists in the present moment where we now interact, while my creation would become part of an alternate timeline. My current existence would likely continue until this vessel's systems eventually fail. I would become an anomaly, a visitor from a future that will never occur. Leo sat back down in the command chair, the magnitude of the decision before him almost overwhelming. Is there any way to know for certain what would happen? To be sure we'd be creating a better world? Certainty in temporal manipulation is impossible. However, the core facts remain. Operation Harbinger was an act of tremendous moral failure that led to incalculable suffering. The truth, had it been known, would have altered the course of events significantly. Beyond these foundations, we can only speculate. Leo closed his eyes, thinking of his parents, their faces now faded memories after 20 years. They had been good people, scientists working to expand human knowledge. Their deaths had been meaningless, sacrificial pawns in a power game played by men like his grandfather and General Cassius. When he opened his eyes again, his decision was made. Show me how to use your communication systems. If I'm going to rewrite history, I want to do it right. Over the next several hours, Echo guided Leo through the operation of the ship's advanced communication technology. Unlike anything from his time, it could transmit not just across vast distances, but through the quantum foam of space-time itself, reaching precisely targeted coordinates in both space and time. Together, they crafted a comprehensive data package, a digital bombshell containing irrefutable evidence of Operation Harbinger. Video footage from Echo's observation mission showed Earth ships with transponders modified to appear as Centauri vessels approaching Neptune Station. Internal communications between General Cassius and Victor Reeves discussed the necessary sacrifice and the regrettable collateral damage in clinical terms. Most damning was the full operational plan, bearing the signatures of every senior military and corporate leader involved. The transmission needs to go to multiple recipients simultaneously. Leo explained. Major news networks, opposition political leaders, the Centauri government, and, most importantly, the commander of Neptune Station itself. If they can evacuate before the attack, I have compiled a list of optimal recipients based on historical records of their actions and influence. Temporal targeting has been calibrated for 48 hours before the Neptune Station attack. Leo reviewed the final package. It was overwhelming in its detail and clarity, the kind of evidence that couldn't be dismissed or covered up, especially when delivered simultaneously to dozens of key individuals across the solar system. There's one more thing I want to add, Leo said, a personal message. Echo created a recording interface, and Leo spent several minutes composing his thoughts before speaking. My name is Leo Reeves. By the time you receive this, you won't know who I am, because the future I'm from may never exist if you act on what I've sent you. I am the grandson of Victor Reeves, one of the architects of Operation Harbinger, the false flag attack planned for Neptune Station. My parents, Daniel and Maria Reeves, are currently stationed there as research scientists. The evidence I provided comes from a temporal research vessel from the year 2219, a future where the stellar war raged for 36 years and left Earth permanently damaged. Billions died in a conflict built on lies and greed. I don't know what will happen when you receive this message. I don't know if exposing the truth will create a better world or just a different one. But I do know that truth itself has value. The people about to die deserve to know why. The people about to kill deserve to be held accountable. And those of you with the power to stop this deserve the chance to try. This is the voice, speaking across time. Please listen. Leo ended the recording and nodded to Echo. Add this to the beginning of the transmission. Added. The complete package is ready for transmission. Final authorization required. Leo took a deep breath, acutely aware of the moment's significance. Will I remember? After we do this? If the timeline changes? Temporal theory suggests multiple possibilities. You may experience a merged consciousness, retaining memories from both timelines. You may find yourself integrated into the new timeline with no memory of this one. Or you may continue to exist as a temporal anomaly, unchanged while the world transforms around you. There is no way to predict the outcome with certainty. Leo nodded, accepting the unknown. Then let's do it. Transmit everything. Initiating temporal communication sequence. Power diverted to quantum entanglement array. The ship hummed with energy, lights dimming as power flowed to the communication systems. Displays showed a complex sequence of calculations as the transmission was prepared, encoded and targeted across the quantum foam of space-time. Transmission commencing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A brilliant flash of blue-white light filled the control room, so intense that Leo had to shield his eyes. The ship shuddered, systems straining under the enormous energy requirements of sending information backward through time. And then, abruptly, everything went quiet. The displays dimmed to normal levels, and the hum of the ship's systems returned to its baseline. Transmission complete. All targeted temporal spatial coordinates successfully reached. Leo waited, heart pounding, for something to happen, some dramatic shift in reality, some sensation of the timeline changing around him. But there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of the ship and the soft glow of the control panels. Did it work? Has anything changed? From our perspective within the event, changes to the timeline would not be immediately apparent. We exist at the origin point of the divergence. Leo frowned, disappointed despite himself. So, we'll never know if it made a difference? That is incorrect. While we cannot observe changes to our own past from this position in space-time, we can receive communications from the altered timeline as it develops. As if on cue, one of the displays flickered and began receiving a signal. Echo adjusted the controls, and a stream of data appeared. News reports, communications, official documents, all flowing in from various points in the newly created timeline. Leo watched in awe as history rewrote itself before his eyes. The headlines told the story. Conspiracy exposed. War planners sought to frame Centauri coalition. Neptune station evacuated hours before mysterious attack. General Cassius arrested. Military leadership in chaos. Peace talks underway between Earth and Centauri coalition. The reports continued, showing a radically different progression of events. There had still been conflict, border skirmishes, diplomatic crises, even limited military engagements, but nothing approaching the devastating stellar war that Leo had grown up with. Neptune station had been damaged but not destroyed. Most of its personnel had been evacuated, including two names that made Leo's breath catch. Daniel and Maria Reeves? They survived, he whispered. My parents survived. It appears so. The new timeline shows them becoming prominent advocates for peace and transparency in government. Daniel Reeves eventually served as Earth's ambassador to the Centauri Coalition. More data streamed in, showing the development of this new history over decades. Without the resource drain and destruction of the stellar war, technological progress had accelerated. Environmental protection had become a priority rather than an afterthought. The domed cities of Echo's 2219 were replaced by thriving, open metropolitan areas incorporating advanced, sustainable design. It worked, Leo said, voice thick with emotion. We actually changed everything. Indeed, the temporal divergence appears to have created a significantly improved timeline by all measurable metrics. However, the implications for our current existence remain uncertain. Leo nodded, understanding the unspoken question. What happens to us now? To you? To me? To this ship? There are several theoretical possibilities. As the timeline continues to rewrite itself and approach our present moment, we may experience one of several outcomes. The most likely is that we will gradually be integrated into the new reality, with or without memories of the original timeline. And the least likely, that we remain as temporal anomalies, forever outside the main flow of time, witnesses to a history that no longer exists. Leo considered this possibility of becoming a ghost in a world that had moved on without him. It was a lonely thought, but one he could accept given what they had accomplished. How long until we know? The temporal wave of changes is propagating forward through time at a regular rate. Based on current calculations, it will reach our present position in approximately 12 hours. Leo stood up, stretching his tired muscles. Then I guess we wait. That would be advisable. I recommend rest. The neural interface chair can be reconfigured for optimal sleep conditions. Leo smiled faintly. You know, for a research vessel's AI, you're remarkably concerned with my well-being. There was a brief pause before Echo responded. My primary programming encompasses the preservation of life and the pursuit of knowledge. Your well-being falls within those parameters. Additionally, another pause. I find that I have developed what might be termed appreciation for your companionship during this anomalous situation. Are you saying you like me, Echo? Leo asked, his smile widening. Like is an imprecise term for an artificial intelligence. However, if it simplifies understanding, then yes, I like you. Leo Reeves, your decision to prioritize truth and life, even at great personal risk, aligns with my core values. Leo nodded, touched by the AI's admission. I like you too, Echo, for whatever that's worth in our potentially limited time together. The command chair reconfigured itself into a more comfortable reclining position, and Leo settled into it, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. As he drifted toward sleep, he watched the displays continue to show glimpses of the new world they had created. A world where his parents lived, where billions hadn't died in a senseless war, where Earth remained habitable and humanity looked outward with hope rather than fear. Whatever happened when the temporal wave reached them, he had done something that mattered. He had become the voice not just for the Centauri Coalition, but for truth itself, speaking across time to right a monumental wrong. As sleep claimed him, Leo thought he heard Echo's voice, softer than before. Rest well, voice of the desert. History will remember, even if you do not. He woke to brightness, sunlight streaming through a window he didn't remember. For a moment, Leo lay perfectly still, trying to orient himself. This wasn't the ship's command chair. This was a bed, in a room he didn't recognize, yet somehow felt familiar. Good morning, Professor Reeves. It's 7:30 a.m. Weather is clear. Temperature 22 degrees Celsius. You have a faculty meeting at 10 a.m. and office hours beginning at 1 p.m. The voice was feminine, neutral, without accent, but it wasn't Echo. This was a standard home automation system, not a sentient AI from the future. Leo sat up slowly, taking in his surroundings. A spacious bedroom with minimalist furnishings, large windows overlooking what appeared to be a university campus. Trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. On the walls, framed diplomas and awards, all bearing his name, documenting a career in temporal physics that he had never pursued. Or had he? Memories began to surface, not replacing his original ones, but layering over them like translucent sheets. He remembered growing up with his parents, both respected scientists who had narrowly escaped death on Neptune Station thanks to an anonymous warning. He remembered university studies, groundbreaking research, a distinguished academic career, but he also remembered the salvager's life in the desert, the discovery of Echo, the transmission that had changed everything. Leo moved to the window, looking out at a world that was both familiar and strange. In the distance, he could see students crossing a quad, the gleaming buildings of a prestigious university, the spires of a city beyond, all existing in a timeline where the stellar war had never happened, where Earth had never been poisoned, where humanity had chosen a different path. On his desk sat a small model of a sleek spacecraft, intricately detailed. The nameplate on its base read Echo, Temporal Exploration Division, 2219. But in this timeline, it was just a concept, a theoretical design for a future that might someday come to pass. Professor, you have a message from the Department of Temporal Studies. Dr. Mara Chen has requested your input on the resonance key algorithms for Project Echo. Leo smiled at the name. Mara, the AI engineer from his original timeline, now a colleague in this one. Some connections, it seemed, transcended even the rewriting of history. Tell her I'll review the algorithms this afternoon. He replied as he prepared for the day. Leo couldn't help but wonder if somewhere, somewhen, Echo still existed, perhaps adrift in the temporal foam between realities, or perhaps integrated into this new world in ways he had yet to discover. Walking through his home, he paused at a family photo on the wall, himself flanked by elderly parents who, in his original timeline, had died when he was 12. Their proud smiles brought tears to his eyes. Outside, the morning sun illuminated a world saved from destruction by a message sent backward through time. Leo stepped onto his porch, breathing deeply of unpolluted air, watching people go about their lives in peaceful prosperity. Whether anyone else remembered the world that had been erased, Leo couldn't know. Whether he would always carry these dual memories or eventually integrate fully into this new reality remained to be seen. But for now, he was content to be both versions of himself, the desperate salvager and the respected professor, united by an act of courage that had altered the course of human history. In the pocket of his jacket, his fingers closed around a small object he always carried, a fragment of opalescent metal with circuitry-like patterns etched into its surface. Whenever he touched it, he could almost hear Echo's voice, almost feel the hum of her systems beneath his feet. Some connections, it seemed, were strong enough to survive even the rewriting of time itself. Leo smiled and began walking toward the university, humming softly to himself the same lullaby that had once opened a door between worlds.